I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm only going to ask you the first half of that question. And I want you to fill in the blank at the end. I want you to fill in the second half of the question. Okay, so just the first half of a question. If you could spend one night alone at the Louvre in Paris, fill in the rest. If you could spend one night alone at the Louvre in Paris, how would you end that question? If you could spend one night alone at the Louvre, where would you sleep? Would you be able to sleep? What halls would you wander? What would you bring? What would you touch? Would you be scared? Would the art come to life? What would you think about? Would you feel alone? Would you feel not alone? What would you be tempted to steal? What mark would you be tempted to leave behind? This book, Like a Sky Inside, is by Jakuta Alikavazovic, and it is the result of the author's experience of spending one night alone in the Louvre. It was translated by Daniel Levin Becker and published by Fern Books in the US, and it has been shortlisted for the Republic of Consciousness Prize for the US and Canada, which is a list I'll be reviewing in full here on this channel. Before we dive into this book in particular, a quick housekeeping note. I will be doing a dedicated video on each of the shortlisted books for the Republic of Consciousness Prize this year, but those videos will be coming out after the winner is announced. The winner is announced on March 12th, 2025, and I'll be still putting up videos for each of the shortlisted books after that. I have read all of the books. I know they all deserve your attention, and so I'm sure that you don't mind that those videos will be coming out after the winner is announced, because they're all, no matter who the winner is, they are all still worthy of your attention, and I would highly recommend every single one of them. This book is part of a larger project, a multi-author project called Ma Nuit au Musée, or My Night at the Museum. It is a literary series that invites writers to spend a night alone in a museum of their choice and then asks them to produce a text based on that experience. It was launched in 2018 by Édition Stock, initially in partnership with the Picasso Museum. The project gives authors complete creative freedom to write pretty much whatever they want that comes out of this experience of solitude and introspection in their one night in the museum of their choice. And the collection has garnered significant critical acclaim, winning prestigious literary awards. A lot of the books have been translated into various languages, and there have been authors who have been a part of this project who are renowned, like Leila Slimani is another one of the authors who has participated in the My Night at a Museum project. This novel, Like a Sky Inside, is set in March 2020, mere days before the pandemic lockdowns. It opens with a woman on her way to spend a night at the Louvre, and she carries an overnight bag with her with all the supplies she's going to need for the night, things like toothbrush and toothpaste, but she also carries something in that bag that shouldn't be there, something she shouldn't be bringing into the museum, something she's not allowed to bring into the museum. Along with her physical baggage, including this mysterious object that she's bringing into the museum, she also brings with her memories of her father, because she and her father used to spend a ton of time in the Louvre when she was a child. And in fact, the recurring question he would always ask her when they were there would be, "And you, how would you go about stealing the Mona Lisa?" But the people who have allowed the narrator to spend the night there don't know that her father used to ask her that question. Jakuta Alikavazovic is an award-winning French writer of Bosnian and Montenegrin origins. She's also a translator herself, and she has translated many works from English into French, including authors like David Foster Wallace and Toni Morrison. And the translator of this book is Daniel Levin Becker, who is also an author himself, but he has translated works such as Laurent Mauvinier's The Birthday Party, which was shortlisted for the Republic of Consciousness Prize last year, and shortlisted for many other prizes as well. Fern Books, which published this edition, is a very small press that says on their website that they are unhurriedly dedicated to forms of writing and ideas about publishing that are thoughtful and generous and expansive. And this book fits that description to a T. This is a book that feels like it contains a sky inside. It's like staring up at the sky. This tiny book makes you feel small. It hints at things that are vast and unreachable, and it quietly gives you the space to ask really big questions. Questions about art, questions about meaning, questions about belonging, and questions about creation and invention. And it does all of this over the course of one night in a museum. And because it is taking place in the Louvre, it is absolutely a book about art, like masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and Venus de Milo. But it goes even bigger than visual art. It's very much about invention and reinvention in general. Reinventing identity, reinventing memories, reinventing language. There are countless examples of invention and reinvention in this tiny little book. For example, museums themselves are filled with what you could call reinventions. So copies of original work that aren't even the original piece themselves. Their copies are in museums. Bad restorations you could think of as kind of a reinvention of an original piece. One of the coolest examples in here is that modern lighting completely alters how we see paintings that originally were meant to be seen or were only seen by candlelight. Even online images that you see of art that's in a museum is a kind of reinvention of that art. So those are all examples of kind of reinventions of original pieces of art. So what we see of a masterpiece is not necessarily the original masterpiece, you could say. It could be a reinvention or a reflection of the original. And the narrator's father is also a reinvention. He himself, like within himself, he has built as we learn through the book, he's built a life in Paris, very far from his childhood home in the former Yugoslavia, which the narrator points out several times no longer exists. It's no longer a place that he can go back to. And he reinvents himself so thoroughly to fit into French life that his daughter is left reconstructing his original identity, trying to understand who he really is beneath his own reinvention. But then, of course, it's impossible to say which is the real him. Both are. Both the original and the reinvention of himself could be seen as her real father. And she goes on to point out that all reinventions still contain elements of the original. So despite her father's best efforts, he still carries elements of his past life, experiences that he can not fully ever escape. And he reflects those trauma. A lot of them are, good and bad experiences, but a lot are traumas. He reflects those onto his daughter, shaping her in ways that he doesn't really realize. And she writes that her generation is supposed to know nothing about the weight of displacement carried by her immigrant parents, but she still feels that weight nonetheless. By writing in here, literally writing the descriptions in this book of artwork, like the Mona Lisa, like Venus de Milo, like her father even, who she describes as kind of a work of art because he's created himself. Even like the Louvre itself, writing that here in these pages, Alikavazovic is herself reinventing them through her words. So this entire book can be seen as like a reinvention of that art. And then that kind of begs the question here in these pages, could you consider reinventing artwork as a kind of Could you consider reinventing artwork in order to create new artwork as a kind of theft? Is she, in a way, stealing the Mona Lisa by recreating it here? In fact, there's a moment in the book, and it's a quote that I think is published online, maybe, or on the jacket. The quote says, it's when the narrator's father says, "It's not even certain that the original purpose of what we call art was to be seen. In a way, we could go as far as to say that art, what we call art, is made less to be seen than to be stolen." So this is also kind of true for her father and the recreation of her father in this book. Her father's attempt to like steal a French identity, to claim it for himself through language, through the clothing he wears, through his comportment, was its own form of art, its own form of creation. He created himself. And the narrator is then in turn stealing pieces of her father and recreating him here, recreating his identity here in words. She's turning like his greatest artistic feat to create himself into more art. If you are a regular viewer here and plan to come back for my other reviews of the shortlisted books, remember that bit about the narrator recreating or like rewriting her father. So that's that specific detail, that she is rewriting her father, because that's going to come back in a big way for one of the other books on the shortlist for the Republic of Consciousness Prize. So I refuse to steal any more of the delight of reading this little book by describing it in more detail, and you should go read the original for yourself. The ending, especially for me, was very profound. It had one of those endings that open possibilities instead of close open possibilities, if that makes sense. But you have to read it to find out what I mean by that. And if you don't want to take my personal word for it, I will note that this book was blurbed by authors like Garth Greenwell, Katie Kitamura, Layla Slimani, Lydia Kiesling, Catherine Lacey, and my personal favorite, Kate Briggs. If you have made it this far, tell me in the comments what museum you would choose to spend the night in, and then what you might write about afterwards. I'll put mine in the comments below, so I would love to see yours. Thanks so much for joining me. I can't wait to talk to you more about these shortlisted books next time. My name is Sarah. Bye.